Wow. Begin. It being 7 p.m. on Wednesday, May 1st, 2024, we will begin tonight's select board meeting. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here for public comment? Just come to the table and introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Michael Jakonski, and I live at 183 Berlin Street here in Clinton. And I'm here to say, like most politicians in this country, I'm getting very old. And mostly I'm here because I forgot that I don't have to be here on Wednesdays anymore. But while I'm here, I thought I'd just talk to you a minute about the Memorial Day Parade and other festivities against the backdrop of the recent article in the item. Certainly, I think the town could do better with the Memorial Day activities. As you know, I'm the MC at Memorial Day. And the parade hasn't changed much in many years, and in some respects is probably less than. I will say that Mr. Bailey is an office of one person in the town hall and virtually does everything having to do with the Memorial Day festivities. If it weren't for him, there would be no Memorial Day. It's a lot of work. He's got to put out 2,000 flags. So he starts sometime in May, puts up 100 a day for 20 days. And then there's all the other things, arranging for the speakers and everything else. We have had some ideas for making it a little, making some changes. We have discussed doing up, besides the speaker's platform, putting up some American flags, one for each person that was actually killed in a war by the war. So section for the World War II vets, Korea, Vietnam, and Desert Storm, etc. That would be another 300 flags. We've talked about doing banners around Memorial Day up on the streetlights like they do in Leominster and some other towns of the people who were actually killed in action. Memorial Day is actually to remember them. I have often thought that I'd like to spend 10 minutes of my time on the podium talking about the life of someone who was killed. But I'm as good as anyone else about sitting on my bum and doing nothing. And so I've never done anything about that. And I think if we had some sort of focus through the course of the year, that could change. The veterans groups, the article seemed to indicate that they were somewhat unhappy with their participation in the Memorial Day festivities and some other things. So I would like to suggest to you that you help form, I don't know what you want to call it, an advisory council to Mr. Bailey and the town administrator around Veterans Affairs. Could include a representative from each of the groups, VFW, PAV, and American Legion, and maybe a couple of veterans not associated with that, to talk about and make recommendations regarding all things related to veteran services. As I was preparing for this, I thought of my own return from Vietnam over 50 years ago. And I was lucky, and the guys of my generation were lucky in that there were a ton of World War II vets everywhere. And everywhere I turned, people told me, go see Franny Boyce down the town hall. Have you seen Franny Boyce? Go see Franny, and were telling me what some of the things I should be doing. And guys coming home today don't have that, I don't think, because there's just not so many veterans. So maybe things like outreach and things like that could work. But in order for it to work, I think that there has to be more community involvement, and that would include very much the veterans organizations. So I know you're very busy. It's budget time. Being on the finance committee, I'm very aware of that. So that's my suggestion. I would be very happy to serve on that committee should you decide to set one up. But if you decide not to appoint me, like I said, I'm as good as out sitting on my bum as anybody else. So that's my suggestion. I hope you'll consider it, and I think it will make for better veteran services and a nicer Memorial Day parade. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very
Okay.
much for your time. That's a great idea.
Great, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else for public comment? The next item on the agenda, review of minutes for April 3rd, 2024 and April 10th, 2024. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve the meetings. So moved.
Second. Any discussion? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think we've approved all of March minutes and now these two. Can we get those maybe posted to the website by Friday? The last 6?
Are they on there? Yeah, these ones here.
And March
Oh, good.
are the ones we've approved in previous meetings.
Very good. The next item on the agenda, commercial garage repair license hearing for 184 Stone Street. Henrigo Rojas Marin, doing business as HM Garage. If you'd like to come up, please, and introduce yourself.
Good evening, I'm Hendrik Mary.
And your address,
Home or?
home would be
Yeah,
great.
105B Prescott Street, Lancaster.
Thank you. All right, so tonight you're here for a garage repair license hearing.
Yes, sir.
All right, do you want to just tell us a little about it?
Yeah, actually, just as a general mechanic shop, doing light service, nothing big, just small repairs, suspension and brake, diagnose, that things.
Very good. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this license? Sure, if you'd come up and please introduce yourself.
Good evening, I'm Karen Albuquerque and I'm supporting this application.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here in opposition of this license? There being none, we'll close that portion of the hearing. Are there any questions from the board? There being none, what is the pleasure of the board?
I will move to approve the application for Henrico Rojas Marin, doing business as HM Garage, to operate a commercial garage repair business at 184 Stone Street in Clinton.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. So the next step will be working with the select board office on the permitting. Very good.
Right. Come into our office for the license and the fee, pay the fee.
Okay,
Okay.
so tomorrow morning?
Sure.
Good luck. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda, the Housing Authority Director, Danielle Fahey. We can move around that.
Yeah, I think to me, we had corresponded, but I don't know if I confirmed with her, so she may
Okay.
not be coming. So.
Sure.
But I think she was just giving an update that they're going out to bid again for their sprinkler project at Presentation Apartments. They had gone out to bid, the bids were way high, and they had to cancel the bids and then redesign, and now they're in a position working with the state to go back out for bidding again. In conjunction with that, the town has approved with the select board's vote from the ARPA money to do a water line that will get the water up to the department. That water line has been designed, and we should be going out to bid soon with DPW on that as well too. So that in conjunction with their bidding, we'll be able to get that water line constructed while they're getting the work done inside the building as well too. So then it's only the connection at the outside of the building that will come in once the water line is done.
Very good.
So I think she wanted to thank the board for the support.
Sure.
There was some ARPA money from the state to do the water line, but there wasn't enough. So the select board brought additional funding to make that whole. And I think she wanted to thank the board for that and to give an update on where they're at. So, why it's been taking a little bit longer than they had hoped because of the pricing, the budget bidding price that they got. So,
Understood.
thank you.
The next item, Library Director Marie Letarte, proposed sites for library project. If you'd please come up and introduce yourself.
A couple of my trustees are also here. Marie Letarte, Library Director. I don't know, Gloria Parkinson and Karen Nugent, trustees.
Sure.
Because we wanted this to be a discussion, and the fact is that the grant is a town grant. It was really important for both the town and the grant application process that the select board, I did, hope I don't have to make more copies, but I can. I sent out a thing with the pros and cons of the 3 sites that it sort of like, the 3 haven't changed since October. But it was important that we get your input. And I think we sort of feel like we did the legwork, giving the pros and cons. And all we have to do is, in the application, is list the 2 sites. I also know that I forwarded to Mike, and he should have forwarded to you, basically I don't even know what it's called, but a certification letter saying all these, there's something for you to sign that says, yes, we understand all the elements. Should you win the grant, these are all we agree to the rules, which have mostly to do with the rules of eligibility and construction requirements from the state. I mean, I looked at it and they're all like legalese. I'm like, I think I know what this means. So I do have something for you all to sign before the town submits the grant. But I'm here to sort of get some feedback on what you were thinking of the 3 proposed sites. One of them is obviously the current site of the library, which has laid out pros and cons. Biggest con is that it's tiny. Biggest pro is that people are already, familiar with the site and they feel very strongly about the building. The next site was 239 Chestnut Street, which is right next to the Verizon thing. Used to be something there. It's now an empty lot. The pros are that it's empty. Cons are that it's not tons of parking. It's a narrow lot, but still it's almost 3 times the size of the current site. And then the last site is 150 School Street. Cons, well, it's the biggest site option, which I guess is the biggest pro. They all are town owned, which is a bonus. And the con is that the building is in site and demolition is required. So, I mean, that's the breaking it down. There's a lot more dots than that if you look at it, but they're all eligible by the rules of the grant application.
Yeah, I think the challenge I have is receiving this tonight and not having the opportunity to review this ahead of time. It looks to be fairly dense.
Oh, the signature thing.
No, this,
Oh, it's not that, it's like 1 page.
I understand, but to be able to go through, digest, be able to look into it, then you have the library construction program agreement.
That was the thing that you probably need time to read, yeah.
Yeah, so I think to get this tonight, truthfully, I'm not even prepared to discuss it. I think this would be something that
You remind them of the.
Get with
going
that.
to s-
Okay, so,
Understand their need.
it does need to be done maybe by the next meeting.
I just need some time. I mean, typically, we get the informational packet usually between Friday and Monday, which is sufficient time for us to be able to kind of review.
Okay,
And so our next meeting is,
The 15th.
there you go. And then, yeah, I'm just speaking for myself. If the board wants to continue discussing, I'm not gonna stand in front of that.
Yeah, I just have one question,
Sure.
Jim. Of your three sites, do the trustees have like a 1, 2, 3 yourselves?
We took a straw poll last night and it went with libraries number 1 and Chestnut Street's number 2.
and like I said, the sites have not changed since October. They're the same 3 sites that I mentioned 6 months ago.
It's the only question I have, Mr.
Sure. Are there any other questions?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm fine waiting, and those would be my first 2 sites too. I'm just curious. I'm seeing here under cost planning design phase. What did I do 3 years ago? Does that
Okay,
affect it at
so
all?
it's a good question. So that was a feasibility study without a construction grant. So it was instigated by a trustee that
Yeah.
wanted to get this done, but at the time there was no construction grant in the works, no existing program. And what that did is enable us to apply for this. We would have had to do that now if we hadn't done it 3 years ago. So the actual part that was the most interesting part, right? The architecture part
Yeah.
is the least useful part of that report. The most useful part is when they went through and looked at all the different systems in the building and said, okay, this is what it would cost to repair. This is the state of this. This is the state of the electric. This is the state of the boiler. This is the state of the walls. So all that was done, and we would have had to do it this year for the grant if it hadn't been done already. So it's sort of related, but not really.
So is that architecture stuff gonna play at all, or? we're just
That
gonna-
architect is actually retiring tomorrow. And so they're going to start from scratch from an architecture standpoint.
Even though we did it for that site already?
Yes, it was more of an exercise in what's the possibility as opposed to what's really feasible. This is what they came up with.
Because we had a price tag on it too. I mean, like.
They
it seemed
did,
like it
but
was-
3 years ago, your price is completely.
No, I
we all
understand.
know
We
the
spent a
price is
lot of time
completely wrong. We did spend a lot of time on it, and we would have done the same if we had done it this year. It's the architecture part was the part they were interested in, but that wasn't the part that's useful for the grant. The architect's going to start from scratch and come up with whatever they come up with based on feedback from the town.
Very good.
But thank you for the
Is-
time you spent, Selectman Kerrigan, at that time. You personally put in a lot of time on that feasibility study, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for now?
And it was not a waste of time, just, to be clear.
We did find out things that were
Yeah.
wrong.
I mean, I think the biggest lesson looking at the feasibility study at that time was just what a poor shape the building is in and not really up to code and all sorts of things like that, that all has a relevancy with the grant program, because if we didn't get the grant and if I'm using the royal we for the whole town, if the grant award was not given, or if it is given and the price tag is X amount with the town raising another percentage of that, all of that poor condition of the building and the need to bring it all up to code would all factor in as an economic argument at that time. The option is to do ultimately nothing, because it's just going to cost more and more if the town ultimately doesn't do something with the building. And the idea of the grant, which is, it's a huge, I think for us and Maria will collect, it's 80%.
So this, to go through this process for the application and grant, it's the opportunity to bring millions of dollars to Clinton. It's the same, it's just, it's a program that's based specifically for libraries. And depending on the cost, it could be anywhere from 40 to 60. 80 would be.
So what's the end on that? 40, 60 what?
40 to 60% of
Oh.
eligible costs.
And again, going back those few years, it was a decision of the trustees to look forward and try and be proactive to see what the reality of a situation was, what it might cost doing nothing.
Very good. All right, so we can put this.
Yeah, just one question, Mr. Chair. The meeting next week, is that a public?
Yes. the
Hearing,
public-
or is it
Thank
just
you for
a-
reminding
it-
me about that.
yeah.
It's a Q&A. If you have more questions for the state consultant of this, who runs this program, will be at the Q&A forum next Thursday here at 6:30. And so gives everybody an opportunity. Anybody can come and, it's not formal. I think it's probably going to be open forum questionnaire. What does this mean? What exactly are all the details that I can't answer?
Sure.
Details about how it works and what
Very good.
is actually eligible costs. That's this Thursday, not tomorrow, but next week, the 9th, 6:30.
Very good.
Should town council review this agreement? Or I don't know, maybe if you look at it, it might be something standard. It is several pages and very dense.
Yeah.
If it's a typical
Yep.
thing that we usually sign for these things, that's fine.
Yeah, I would like to have them take a look at it. I'm sure it's standard grant language that they need to have, but it's something that we're attesting that we're going to abide by, so.
Experience.
Very good. Thank you very much.
you.
And I'll be on the agenda for the next select board meeting. All right, the next item. Community and Economic Development Director Phil Duffy. Could you please come up?
Good evening, members of the board. I'm here to discuss, to follow up upon our discussion of last meeting concerning the town of Payne Brook and the need for repair and of the culvert, at least under Main Street, probably on Church Street, where there are known issues. Our first funding opportunity for that is the Massachusetts One Stop program, or the One Stop portal, which can be used to apply to either the Mass Works program or the Housing Works program. In order to put together a competitive grant application, we will need to have drawings, and we need to adequately characterize existing conditions. I have spoken with two firms that are familiar with the project. They have submitted proposals, and I'm here to request that the board authorize use of $75,000 of ARPA funds to pay for assessment and design for repairs of the culvert. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that. I think it's pretty straightforward. That grant application is due June 5th. And before you have three motions that I'm asking you to entertain. One to authorize the use of funds, and the other two to enter into agreements with the chosen design and assessment.
What is the pleasure of the board, unless there are questions that you want to ask prior?
We have this, right?
So what you're asking for then, excuse me, is 75,000 and then 44,000?
No, 75,000 total. The two contracts add up to 72,600. I just rounded off to the nearest number that would cover that.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the use of ARPA funds in an amount of not to exceed $75,000. Funds to be used to document existing conditions and to design and prepare bid documents for repair of Counterpane Brook culvert between Main and Church Streets.
I'll second.
Any discussion or questions? There be none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the town to enter into an agreement for engineering services with Haley and Ward, contract amount not to exceed $44,000.
Second.
Any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the town to enter into an agreement for diving and inspection services with Diving Services. Is it 2 hours in that thing, or?
Oh, that's
Gonna take one of those out, just want to make sure it's.
I missed the dollar sign too. I noticed it.
That's all right. Diving Services Inc., contract amount not to exceed $28,635.
Second.
Any question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll be at your next meeting and hopefully if you have a meeting before June 5th, at that meeting to give you updates. We'll be developing a budget. We'll be developing kind of the application. The application that, it's strongly recommended by the One Stop, by EOH, Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, that communities go in with a match of approximately 25%. I have no idea what this project budget is going to be. That could potentially be covered by ARPA funds again, or it could be covered if the town meeting, if the warrant article is placed on the town meeting warrant, and if town meeting approves the warrant article for $3.2 million, it could also be covered by that. But I really have no idea what the cost of this is going to be. It's really a project that I'm not all familiar with, so I wouldn't even hazard a guess. But we'll be following up with you as we develop the application and the design.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, review of the 2024 draft annual town meeting warrant. We have budget first or?
Budget first.
Oh, I'm sorry, budget. Yeah. Draft budget. I'm sorry. Review of fiscal year 2025 draft budget.
So I think, Mr. Chair, we did have this a kind of a comprehensive draft. The board had been doing individual budget hearings, so we wanted to kind of provide a draft of full revenue expenditure with the requested budgets. Finance Committee had met recently and kind of gone over different aspects after review of the budget hearings and then reviewing this draft budget. And they were looking for input from the select board in order to kind of start making some determinations on the final document that they'll be put together for town meeting. So I think some of the big project areas they were asking about, some new position requests from departments, as well as the ALS budget. And I know the budget that was submitted by the fire chief is a lot more than what that 1 year cost is. So we'll need to kind of adjust that and break that out. And then there were some questions on some of the warrant articles, if all of those are going to stay on, so that they can start working the financing for those as well too. I know they're meeting next week, so they thought if the select board had any specific areas or items that they wanted to review or concern, that they would like that, looking for that feedback.
Mr. Chair. Sure. One thing I didn't see was we talked about maybe dedicating some money for a conservation consultant for next year. I know I've been fielding calls this week about something that's behind. And I know I've spoken at length on this, so I won't take any more time on the board, but I wasn't sure if that was passed over or if just forgotten.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I don't think because they didn't submit a formal request other
Okay.
than what was brought up at. So these are what's on the list here is only what, documents I received, but that was discussed at the meeting. And I think the finance committee seems open to putting in a dollar amount.
Do we have to do
know-
something specific? I'm sorry, I haven't been on the other side of the table before as far as a budget request. Is there paperwork we just have to fill out?
Yeah, we have forms that we submit, budget forms that we submit, and generally it goes to staff, not to the board members themselves. So so in the future, just if there was any specific, I mean, generally it's just the same level funding each year. So if there was something specific, we can entertain it. So the issue was brought up at the budget hearing that day. And I think the finance committee is open to putting something in there. They just didn't know what that
Gotcha.
number is, whether it's 10, 15, 20, what number, they're looking at. I think they kind of hoped it wouldn't be more than 20, but somewhere kind of in that ballpark, that they're willing to consider.
Yeah, up to 20,000 was the understanding of the agreement.
Thank
Well,
you.
Sean, would you, I mean, because we've never had that position, are we talking a consultant?
Yes, I think that's,
I mean, I'm fine with that. I think
Yeah.
that was
to
just to
stay-
get the.
Yeah, just to see where the needs are and how much the needs,
Right.
are that would 10,000, 15,000 accommodated, 20,000 at tops.
Right, I'll huddle with the other board members or the other commission members, sorry, to get, I know we had looked at neighboring towns and things like that, so we'll sharpen that pencil as soon as we can. I'm just seeing, as I've said before, just this week, there's things that are more complicated than they should be as far as notice of intent and things like that. And it's just, it's frustrating to everybody, I think, the developers and us included. So let me, but the idea was to try and, like we said, to try and get the lay of the land to see, instead of creating a new position out of nothing, bring somebody in who's done this before and to give us an idea of what the workload is.
So I guess I would make a motion that we recommend that it be considered by the finance committee to go to a consultant for a year, not to exceed 20,000.
Great. I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah. So I didn't know if there was anything department by department that the board wanted to go through, or just highlight any areas that you heard through the budget hearings, or any questions on the revenues or anything.
Well, I know, I guess if I guess I'll just start to the
Yeah.
first page. I can't.
We were in.
But
bus
on
and
the,
budget, so we had a lot of questions.
on the fire prevention officers, I'm just not in favor of it. I don't think it's been demonstrated that it's really needed. I think in the past, the chief has always been able to accomplish those things. And I know that the deputies and other department people have assisted in those, commitments that needed to be done. I know there was a list of it, but I just think that there's enough of people within that department that people could be, if there is some training that's needed, that it could be done within the department. And so I guess I'm just not convinced that it's needed at this time.
So within the subcommittee, the finance committee, the two members from the finance committee and the two members from the select board had come to an understanding that funding one of the fire prevention officers at a salary of no greater than 70,000 was acceptable to both groups at the table.
Yeah, but that's the subcommittee. I'm
I'm
talking
just
from
sharing
the board.
feedback.
I'm just saying from the board, I think that's the way it's supposed to go, that Board of Selectmen meet, and then they meet with the finance committee with the direction of.
All I'm sharing is the feedback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just the discussion. It wasn't decided, it was just discussed.
But I'm just saying that
Yeah.
my opinion is,
For
or
sure.
whatever it's worth.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think, we've had this discussion the last couple of years. I think the fire permitting process is something that the chief has openly stated at several public meetings that they are far behind on, and he needs the support. I'm in favor of the position. It's a fair compromise. He was looking for two. I think if we try it with one and go from there, that's my own take on it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. What'd you say, 70?
70.
And that was at like rough, some just very rough research based on what other kind of open positions are. But yeah, I was not in favor of two positions. One I'm willing to entertain.
Well, I guess I would go back again for discussion that, what isn't being done that right now, that would warrant the request. That's what I'd like to see. What has not been accomplished that would constitute, saying, well, I support it because, yes, that's not getting done. Or is it just the case that the chief feels that it's, is it more than he feels he can do? And if that's the case, does he need to direct his workload to other ways? I mean, you just come up and you say, well, I need these positions, and for 4 chiefs before him, they've been able to accomplish the work, and there's been a lot of development in this town. And the necessity never came up before, so, those are, I think, valid questions. What isn't being done $70,000, I wish I was making $70,000. It's not a measly amount of money, that obviously the taxpayers eventually pay for, so.
Yeah, we all had the opportunity to ask questions when the chief was presenting his budget.
And I did, many times.
Oh,
I've questioned.
what was needed for what is not being done for the inspections was asked.
No, I think I asked during that process why he felt he needed it, and I didn't ever really get a good answer, as far as I'm concerned. That's just my opinion, and I'm entitled to it, so I'm just saying how I feel.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with you. Everyone is entitled to their opinion up here, and I agree. So outside of that, does that need a motion to show support to the finance committee, or is that just the conservation committee? Is that just
Yeah, I mean, are we just going through redlining this thing, or can we give the subcommittee guidance as far as?
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for, the subcommittee to have guidance to work it out, because anything that's discussed will come back at the next meeting, or the next board meeting, to give an update on anything that's been changed. So I think it's just, if there was anything specific that you want to highlight to the subcommittee.
and then just sticking with the fire department, the subcommittee had discussed ALS, and based upon the discussion with the finance committee members, the finance committee is in favor of moving forward with ALS this fiscal year, for the upcoming fiscal year. I'm sorry.
And that's under the ambulance revolving enterprise fund. Is that where we're putting it?
Let's see.
Comp pay. $230.
Yeah, use of resources.
I've got go up on enterprise budgets here.
There you go.
I'm looking at 523. Is that's the number we're going to adjust? Michael, the 523 200 for ALS. It's under the enterprise fund.
Right, yeah. So those numbers, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So those numbers are the enterprise fund that's gonna change.
Okay, so the 523 will change.
Right. Yeah, that
200.
so that 523. Yeah. So that's gonna, that will come down from what the numbers that the chief gave. I think the finance committee's thoughts were there were 2 openings in the department now. So if they were going to go forward, then those 2 should be paramedics, and then the finance committee would look to fund two new positions that will hopefully be attrited, as time goes on, with people in the department if they retire. So it would be 2 positions plus a stipend for the other 2. So it wouldn't be 4 full salaries. So that's why that 523 will be reduced considerably. But certainly it won't affect the bottom line of the general budget, but the enterprise fund will maybe be able to sustain it a little bit more for the first year for the cost, because I think once all of the costs get in at the end of the 3-year process, I don't think the revenue is going to cover it totally, but I think for the first year, it may be able to cover the first year. So.
Very good. The other, let me just go through the notes real quick.
So
Sure.
I guess, going back again, if you're talking about a tridding, and I thought he said he had nobody retiring now, that there was nobody eligible for.
Right, no, there wouldn't be any retirements in the foreseeable future, but if people leave for other, he
Other
has.
positions, yeah.
Yeah, he has had a lot of turnover in the last 5 years,
Yeah.
from people leaving for other positions or other towns, so.
So, but
There. I'm just gonna go through the notes and then, sorry to jump around. There wasn't support for the Parks and Recreation Admin Assistant position. That was proposed. I don't know if that's even, is that a line item even on the budget? I know they discussed it at one of the last meetings, but
Yes.
okay.
26.
Yes.
The
well, as I guess direction to the subcommittee, I would have to agree with the finance committee. I don't see the need for it either. I guess I would not.
What was the other position?
It was an admin person in the Parks and Rec committee.
Yeah, that was one. And then there was moving the admin in the fire department from part-time to full-time.
Oh, police department.
Oh, police. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
And then it was additional, I think it was 17 or 18,000 in the library.
Oh, the library was doing. Thank you.
Which I don't know where that one left off as far as the personnel board, if it was just, if that position didn't seem like it was evolving, changing. I don't think that there was discussion on, or there was any finalization on an assistant director position or responsibility.
Right, I think the personnel board was willing to add those duties into the job description, but they felt that the position should stay at the same grade level, at the same salary level. So I think the director then was looking for the additional funding. And if that didn't happen, I think she's just gonna hire at the regular position that was there, so.
And then for the full-time admin for the police department, there was the support there.
I believe so. We'll double check next meeting, but
And then the other was, the other recommendation was 500,000 into the stabilization fund.
Mhm.
Is that in here? Is that in this budget here?
For which,
The 500,000 for the stabilization fund?
it is not in the rundown, it's
Yeah.
in the, it's on the warrant,
Okay.
but it's not part of the fund, the articles haven't been funded as part of the spreadsheet as of yet. Again, until we see what was gonna actually be on the final warrant. So that would be funded, through outside sources and would be on the spreadsheet for the just the articles themselves.
But this draft here has a shortfall. So how realistic is that shortfall compared to what the finance committee is in support of? Like, we wouldn't put money in the stabilization fund if we had a shortfall.
Yeah, I think the shortfall, they're looking to make it up in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so the stabilization, if money, I think there was talk about putting at least 500,000 or more into the stabilization fund through a warrant article. So then that would come out of just one time, either last year's surplus money or
Okay.
one-time funds, not out of the general budget.
Okay.
But there's 700,000 deficit in the general budget that I think the finance committee would like to see done within the context of this document without putting extra money into it.
Yeah, good.
And as you mentioned before, with the paramedic under the ambulance enterprise, that number would decrease.
That won't decrease that 700,000 because that way,
Oh,
that's all
so
just
enterprise.
offline off of the enterprise charges, so it won't affect the number. The 700,000 is a general fund deficit for the budget.
Fire prevention potentially would go from
That
200 to 70.
Yep,
Potentially.
that would bring it down.
All right.
Well, where's the rest of that coming from then? Is it just smaller items adding up, or because I was looking at the two fire things adding up to 700 and figured that was the big bump, but if the 500 isn't counting, where's the other 500 coming from?
Yeah, I
See any
think
huge
you're
increase.
looking at some of these positions, requested positions, and there are some capital items that were put into the budget, like the police tasers that are going to be in the operating budget. So I think you can use, if you identify one-time expenditures, I'd be fine with using one-time revenues to pay for those capital expenditures if they're in the operating budget, and they're not going to be there next year. So, so I think they're looking to kind of maybe, move some of those expenses out, not out, but out to a different funding source.
There was one question about the, on 292 for the animal control officer, the animal control kennel fees going up, almost doubling. And there was just a question about that.
Yep.
Not really.
Can you get more information?
Sure.
Yep. And then also too, our health insurance consultant is putting together a final number of what our health insurance appropriation would be. I think the treasurer did a 2% increase in his budget, just because it was early on in the process. But the consultant is looking at current enrollment and trying to get a closer number on that. So I think there will be some room for that number to come down as well too.
So just through general discussion, also, we talked about the hardware under the technology requests. So even though some of those are in there, those could be pulled out and then either X'd out.
Right, yeah,
They're replaced.
there would be some items that people are looking to buy new computers that are part of the upgrade budget of that ARPA budget. So certainly some of them can. I know a big one was the treasurer had put in for 3 new machines, but he had put it into his capital request, but not into his budget. So I believe that his miscellaneous expense was fairly level funded with just a small cost of living increase. So that won't affect the bottom line because he didn't put it into the budget, but some other departments did. So if we pull those out of their expense budget and say they're going to be paid with the technology upgrade, then that would reduce some of those items as well too.
And then the other one was just having conversations with the town administrator about the photocopiers that are used within the different departments. So a list was put together for each department that has a photocopier, as well as who the vendor is, what the monthly payment is on it. And there were 16 photocopiers. Within the various departments, there are 8 different vendors for those photocopiers. And then with Konica taking over the IT services, and they offer copier services as well, looking to start maybe consolidating all the copier contracts into one to see if we can get better pricing. So with the lease agreements that they have, are there any financial penalties on breaking leases? Have we kind of?
Yeah, I haven't looked at every one of the contracts yet, but I did talk with our Konica vendor, and because there are several machines in the building directly through Konica, And they said that most of the copiers that we get in the building here are through the state contract. And under the state contract, once you sign it, they have a right to recoup the costs of that lease.
Okay.
So if you want to stop payment, you can prepay, or you want to turn it in and get another machine, but they're still allowed to get the rest of the money on that lease
Gotcha.
agreement. So there isn't really, there wouldn't be like just a small fee that you could pay to get out of the remainder of it. You would have to buy out the rest of the contract, and then it wouldn't make sense getting another one if you're already paying the cost of that.
Understood. So with any leases that were ending in 2024 or early 2025, we could then transition them to
Sure.
Conica.
Yep.
So, because there's currently, I think there's currently 5 copiers within the departments that are already with Conica, I believe. So there's potential for another 2 or 3, I think, had their leases coming up within the next fiscal year. So even if it's over a 2 or 3 year period, kind of getting it to have it similar to the technology aspect, where that would fall under one fund under the select board. So then any equipment that's being purchased would then go through the consultant or the recommendation by the consultant based upon what the need is.
Yeah.
Would we get a better deal than the state? Or is it just the idea to have it one deal with the state?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you did have, like when I talked to our vendor, you could put a plan in place that over the next, I think there might still be 2 or 3 years before everyone is out, and maybe try to do like, if you do get a copier in the meantime, maybe do a shorter lease so that it's only, if it's only 2 years before everyone is up, then do a 2-year lease. And then when everybody's up, if you have 15 of them, then maybe you could go out to the market and bid it individually as all 15. Otherwise, the state contract, they do bid. The state does go out and bid it and does a bulk purchase. And then we're allowed to just go in and take advantage of that pricing. There are other, the Conica vendor also deals with other consortiums, purchasing consortiums, and they'll get pricing from all of those as well, just to give us a line saying, here are 5 group purchasing arrangements, here are the pricing, or we could put our own bid package together and put it out on the street ourselves. So
think it's a good idea.
But as the onesie, twosies, it's probably better just going to the state bid because it'd be a lot to put out for one copier. But if you have 15 of them, then maybe that might be, that might be worth it at that point.
Good.
But if the board, wants to take that position as a policy, then, certainly they could work with departments on the upcoming fiscal year to ensure that they use the state pricing through Conica and then try to develop a capital project over, I think the last one might be up in 26, or maybe there's one in 27, maybe. And then try to, work towards everything coming up at the same time, almost like we do with union contracts, and have them all up at the same. And then that way you can kind of put them all together and make sure that you get consistency on pricing and product. Even maintenance, as big as the maintenance contracts, because when they break, we don't have anyone to fix them unless you're under contract with the company. So by having that, as a global, then maybe there is some, area for savings there.
And even, is there a possibility of, even on the cell phone front, where kind of eventually getting to where there's just one, if an employee needs a cell phone and it's approved or funded, then it's just purchased out of the one plan versus right now where it seems like, could be used.
And again, I haven't done that analysis, but most departments use Verizon.
Yeah.
And Verizon, that we have a government rate and a government account with Verizon, as we do like with the office supplies that we talked with the board. We have a Staples account, we have an Amazon account. They're all government accounts that everybody has a login and access to individual departments. And people do that with Verizon as well. And we don't have a ton of cell phones.
Yeah.
Like there aren't a lot of people that have, 'em. Like I don't have one. A lot of department heads don't have town cell
Okay.
phones. So certainly I can do that analysis and ask people how many we have out there. But I think everyone that I'm aware of, I think are on Verizon government account right now. So.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have to worry about it if there's a few. Were there any other departments that you want to go over, or do you want to go down one by one, or open to whatever?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I gave it a decent read, but without getting my calculator out, figured the 7 was coming from those 2 fire department asks. So like if they're much smaller things, then I guess it's just, we're gonna have to just go through it and
Yep.
figure out.
Under the assessor's expenses, there was discussion about and I believe it's under that line item where it was like the next layer of the GIS system where it's a little more thorough or provides more. Not even
Like specific.
Right, exactly. And I think I did create a budget folder that I sent the board, a link to the board. So all the budgets that were submitted, I had put into that folder. So you will see under the assessors that they did have a quote for that. And what it is, it's for, they do it a couple times a year. They'll do an actual flyover of Clinton and they'll get a lower level GIS mapping. So right now, the photo image is used by satellite from Google satellite. This one here would be a low level that would get directly to just all of the parameters of Clinton. And then there's software that comes with it. So then it will all integrate into our GIS that's on the assessor's map as well too. So you just get, sharper detail of the buildings, sharper detail of the property lines, the images, as to what's there.
The general consensus on the subcommittee was probably not something that there was support to move forward with this fiscal year.
And certainly, I think Mr. Barrett could speak to it, much more detail than I could. So we could certainly have him in. If there's any questions, you could have him in to talk about it, or a subcommittee meeting, or
Sure.
meeting or whatever.
So remind me, is DPW adding somebody?
DPW, I don't think they were adding any positions, no.
At facilities was taking someone who I think was a contractor. I thought they already had the position. They were just,
For which
I
position?
thought it was facilities, but
Is this DPW wages bump of like 100,000? Is that just the contract?
Oh, I think with DPW, what that ended up being is there were 2 positions at the landfill.
Okay.
That now the landfill is closed, so
Gotcha.
those,
So it's
one
coming
was
from-
put in the water sewer and one was put in the road.
Thank you.
So those were expenses that were paid through user fees.
Oh yeah, so the facilities was adding they were gonna they were gonna eliminate the contracted cleaning service and then add 1 employee.
Right. There's a cleaning service at Parks and Rec and at the school central office. And they were going to eliminate that contract and try to hire another person. On the town side, there are two custodians that do library, town hall, senior center, police department, and then the contractor does Parks and Rec. So if we get rid of the contractor, they do the school central office, Parks and Rec, and then all the other town buildings. It probably would be a lot for 2. So the thought is the savings on that contractor could then help fund a third position that could cover all those buildings, cover vacations and leaves and timeout, stuff like that. But there are a lot of big buildings for two people when you're doing library, town hall, senior center, and police department, and Parks and Rec and school superintendent's office.
I'm not seeing a whole lot, I think.
Yeah, so I think where the state has been, the last several years has been pretty generous, and as our budget, as the board knows, relies a lot on state aid. And I think we're okay this year. And we've had some good surpluses from year to year to be able to buy capital equipment and fund our stabilization and our reserves. So, which has been a good situation financially in the last 5 years. But I do see and feel a kind of a little slowdown coming. So I think we're good this year, but going forward, it's probably something to keep an eye on spending and appropriations, because even in this budget here, as you go through it, I think for me, 700,000, I think we're good. We can find it based on the requested budgets. But when you look, there aren't like a ton of line items that you can pull out. And
That's what I'm
unless you
saying,
actually
right.
make big cuts to departments. So, yeah. So, so I think it is good to kind of keep it kind of as level funding as we can this year. I think would be helpful.
And as far as the warrant articles that were proposed, that is all. Where would that be represented on the budget sheet?
Yeah, well, on the next to last page before of the budget, under the sum up of everything. So the right before at the beginning part of the budget are all general fund budget requests, and then you go into then you'll have a summary. Then there'll be the three for enterprise fund requests. Then there's a general summary of operations, and then there'll be a general breakdown on that next to last page, which shows all revenues and against expenses.
There you go. So it's on
It's
revenue and.
So in that first section where it'll say annual
Yeah.
town meeting articles on
uses
the
of
left,
resources.
if you go across, last year we spent almost 5.9 million. And this year there's only 74,800, because that's just the standard articles that we put in every year, which is the rent for social services, the 50,000 for senior tax work-off program, and the wheat appropriation assessment for wheat. So those are three that are general, always kind of annual articles. Beyond that, they're usually all new beyond that. So I will change that number. That's 74,800. That will change once, we get a sense that the articles that have been submitted will get put forward to the finance committee. And then I'll put those in that line item there. And then on the last page, under funding sources, on that last section, then those would have to be filled in with where the money is coming from to fund it. So whether it's free cash from last year's surplus, or borrowing, or a cable fund, or capital infrastructure fund, wherever that's coming from going forward. Because I think there's like 250,000 for road paving that would come out of the capital infrastructure fund. So then we'll pull out, the expenses will be put in that line, and then we'll pull out on that last page where they'll be put together once finance committee identifies where they'd like to spend, what ones they're supporting, and where they would like to see, what fund they'd like to see that particular item be put into.
So then with the warrants, is everyone okay with jumping into the warrants now? So hypothetically, if every warrant article here was approved at town meeting, then that 700,000 is probably, that's going up.
Nope, no,
Would not.
no, because we wouldn't be looking to fund any of the warrant articles through general fund money.
Gotcha.
The ones that we do fund with raise and appropriate are the social services, 4,800, and the wheat, 20,000.
Yep.
The other 50,000 is it's part of our general operations, but you'll see it's broken out on the last page under assessor's overlay. So the overlay account pays for the abatements for people that do the work off program. So what we'll then do, so any general fund impact is already included in that 700,000. Any of the other articles, I would suggest they don't get approved if they're going to be raised and appropriate, because then it would increase that 700,000. So any of these articles we would be funding through last year's surplus funds, through free cash, or through we have an abatement account. The assessors have an abatement account that after the period of appeal has ended, any money so much money is put in each year to cover abatements. And after the appeal period is ended, that money can no longer be used for anything. So they can then say, our cases are all closed, we're closing out that money, and then that can get turned back to be used to reappropriate by town meeting, could reappropriate. So you can use it from that fund, or you could use it from the free cash from last year's surplus. Some of them will be borrowing accounts, and again, there hasn't been discussion yet, but whether if the boards are going to go forward with the 3.2 million for the downtown project, whether that would be considered to be borrowing instead of, that would be paid over time, because it's a big expense, and waiting to see if the grant would get approved. That could be a borrowing authorization instead of tying up 3.2 million of either capital money or free cash that could then be, put into reserves or something. So any of the town meeting articles would all be using the one-time fund, so it won't impact the 700,000 deficit. So, and again, we've been fortunate to be able to do a lot of capital expenditures the last couple of years, but I think after this year, there's quite a few on there this year. So if the select board and finance are supporting, and town meeting supports all of those expenses, we'll probably use up any carryover, any free cash carryover that we've had the last couple of years, because we haven't spent it all. So that carryover will probably be used up this year. So we'll probably see free cash will tighten up next year. But if we feel that we've bought, gotten caught up on our capital funds, we've beefed up our reserves and the stabilization. There's still a healthy amount in the capital for the road paving account. So I think at that point, if your reserves have been built up, you bought, kind of upgraded your fleet and your capital expenses, then it doesn't make sense to be carrying large balance surplus every year from the general operations. So,
What do we have for free cash? Am I seeing this right? Like 3.5?
Yeah, the availability this year is about 3.5 million.
And I think just, looking at the budget request documents that we kind of shifted towards this year, I think what I think would be the next step is kind of getting a little more into the itemization, where there's not just so general, there just seems to be a lot of general numbers that are an umbrella for a lot of different things. Not that I would expect them to kind of follow the school budget model, but it's quite helpful to kind of see the line items, and if that's what they're relying on it each year as further operation, then it helps from the budget review process to be able to actually go in and see that, because I don't know how much of a cushion they build for themselves when they make the budget request, but when it comes time to trim the budget down a little bit, it would be helpful to know what would, what would
You know,
we
everything that makes up that number, and if it's, year to year hard costs that can't be changed, or whether there's some discretionary monies in those miscellaneous expense funds as well.
Yeah. So then, as far as the warrants go, this has to be approved. We have to vote on this by,
By May 15th, the
May
next
15th,
meeting.
next
Yeah.
meeting.
So this here is kind of comprehensive. I know the first draft, I know there were a couple issues that, were still outstanding, so they have been added. I think there might be just one or two that are just more housekeeping, with the accountant. There might be a need for, a water sewer deficit, miscellaneous expense deficit for this year. So if that's needed, then that might get added by next meeting. The accountant had talked about something. I want to speak with town council about maybe putting an article on to kind of close out our opioid fund. We set up a stabilization fund because we were trying to get ahead of the curve to put that opioid money that's coming in over a 5-year period, to put it back. Then by town meeting action, it allows us to put that directly in. But then after we did that this past year, the state then passed a law that allows it to be considered a special revenue fund. So now that money, the accountant can put that money in the special revenue fund on her own through that enabling legislation through the DOR. So again, our first payment was coming up, so we wanted to get ahead of it and be able to get that into that fund. So now the accountant said, it probably wouldn't need to have to go to town meeting every year to change that. So again, I'll talk with the town council and the accountant and see if we want to go forward with eliminating that fund, or what the pros and cons of that would be. So something like that might be on. The water and sewer deficit might go on. I think we did add, since the last meeting, a lease for the ambulance and a trash truck lease, which is on there. And I'm just going to double circle back with community television director about a capital, what the capital needs would be. And last year we did an operating budget and a capital budget. There's still some capital money left. So we just want to see whether, as the accountant said, that capital can be put into his operations, but I'd like to see it kind of split out so we know this is going to year expenses, and then we know what the capital building expense would be. So he did send me some numbers to say what was appropriated this year, what he spent, what he's going to need between now and next June, and to see whether we need to appropriate a little bit more in a capital item, or whether he'll have enough to get through from what's still left in the article from last year. So if we do have to have another capital item, we might just throw on another article for that, or we could just change. The article that's on there right now is for the operations, for the cable operations. So we could just change that number if you didn't want to have a whole nother article to vote on, or we could just add a capital article, or just change that number. So I'll know more on that by next meeting, and I'll know more on the opioid fund and the water and sewer deficit by next meeting. But other than that, I think most of the articles are included on there from tonight. So I just kind of, again, wanted to do another rundown of the warrant to see, after you had review from the last meeting, if there were any questions, if there were any departments or presentations that you'd like on any of these requests. And the finance committee, again, looking for direction on what is going to stay on there. If nothing is going to be removed, then they know they can start kind of having dialogue on their side as to whether they're going to approve or disapprove, and if it's approved, where they would recommend funding to come from. So So if there's anything, I think we're up to, what is it, 41 articles and maybe a couple more, saying we might end up with 45 in the end. I know it's a big warrant, for a town meeting, but, and with the school project on there as well, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of, discussion, but, with all the business that we have to do, but it's our once a year chance to get everything out there. So if there's anything you wanted to talk about, let me know. If there's anything by next meeting that we want to eliminate, then I can let finance committee know as well too.
Do we know how much the carriage house at the senior center is going to be?
We had a meeting today with the architect briefly. He was here to do some more work on the site, and I just wanted to ask him that question just so that we would know. It's probably looking at, I think, as Mr. Kerrigan, you mentioned, 6 figures, low or high. It's probably going to be low 6 figures, so maybe a couple $100,000. Probably looking at. And that'll be the first phase. It'll just kind of do a code upgrade and that first space, just that fitness area that they're looking to start using. A lot of it, the walls are in pretty good shape. It's beadboard so it is kind of finished. It's going to need a new floor, some lighting, some electrical upgrades, and then there's discussion on code requires a bathroom, but whether we could go for a variance at the plumbing board to ask for a variance to say they could use the one that's in the senior center. So those are some questions they're still trying to work out right now. But the first phase isn't going to be a huge cost, but then they are going to give, some information to allow, to expand to the rest of the first floor, and then potential expansion for the second floor, and even potential use of the basement area. I think there's 8-foot ceiling in the basement. So they'll just provide all that information. So if there's any potential needs in the future, that we'll at least have some preliminary information, but the amount that be on the warrant will be just to, make it accessible and up to code, the utility codes, and that exercise room, build out of the exercise room.
The only other one, and just curious, what happens if the dog park passes and we steal the secondary library site? Do we have to go back and change that?
Yeah, I think, again, a question I can pose to town council, but the gentleman who proposed it, I talked with him, and I think it's, I see it as a referendum to the select board, from the people. Whether it's a mandate that we have to do it, that's something I'll talk with town council on. But because I indicated to him that, I understand, and that it would be a great community asset, and people probably would love to have it that own dogs. But as the town running it, it creates a lot of liability and rules and supervision and maintenance that we don't have those answers for, or we don't have that funding for. I think the amount of money, the 70,000 that he was putting in the article, was to build the fences and gates and, just get it set up. But all of the ongoing operational expenses, that's something we'd have to look at. So I said to him, it's not something that you can say this has to be done in 6 months or a year. As a select board is going to have to really look into it and research whether it's something that's possible for the town to do. I know other towns have been trying to do it, and they're running into a lot of these questions as well too. Over in Hudson, I think they're trying to get one going there, and it's been quite a while of trying to solve a lot of these liability type issues. So I'll talk with town council, we'll see, but hopefully it'll be just maybe the townspeople giving their thoughts on whether we should start looking at doing that, and or whether they can tie up a site without the select board. Select board has oversight of town properties. So I don't know, I guess town meeting is ultimate authority. I guess they can designate another space, but it would be, kind of premature if there's going to be other uses for that land in the future.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Yeah, I think the only, as much as I would love to see a dog park in town, I think the challenge that I have with that particular warrant is to have facilities input, to have Parks and Rec input, to kind of build the infrastructure of it. Because outside of that, I don't see how it's sustainable um, based upon the financial request that's there.
Right. And we'll probably need special insurance. I know
Yeah.
because we had another group a couple of years ago, another group had approached me, citizens, and, and I said, love to have you go do some research, come back with some information. I gave them a list of my concerns and asked if, they could kind of give me some feedback on that. And they did go and talk to some of the organizations, talk to some other communities. And we did look into talking with our insurer, and I know they were very much against it about insuring us because of the liability of potential harm, that's caused by the animals or humans that could get bitten or get injured there. So there's a lot. There's a lot. If you're doing it in a private means and you can control who comes and goes, that's one thing. But as a town that's open to everyone, the public, it creates a lot of questions.
All right, do we want to come back to the warrant for the next meeting? If you have any
Yeah, any other
Notes.
the TBAs.
or if you're ready to move forward now or whatever.
Do you want to wait and see if Mr. Walton? Perfect. I mean, if we have to,
Yeah.
if we can wait, I just
Let's
do
do
it.
Okay. All right, so we'll thank you very much for all that information, and then we'll revisit that on May 15th. The next item on the agenda is the town administrator report.
Okay, Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick items I wanted to pass by the board. Last week, we had a department head meeting. We had our labor attorney came out, did kind of some training on management, over management of employees and best practices on addressing any management issues with running a department. So it was good, and we had a little over an hour, and we had some good dialogue, so it went well. The EPA, Mr. Duffy was out there with them that day. The EPA finished their testing on the piles at Sterling Street, and they were able to this time get all the samples that they needed. So now we're just waiting for the analysis to come back to see whether or not, if there is material in that pile that would qualify for the grant program under the asbestos removal program. So we do have funding from Mass Development where they extended our grant deadline on that. They extended that so we could use that in the upcoming year once we get better analysis and see if we can put another piece of the puzzle together, because the Mass Development money wasn't enough to do the whole project. So hopefully we're moving forward on that realm. The Jeans Auto property, we're just waiting kind of any day now for Mr. Duffy is working on that as well, just kind of waiting for the final environmental sign off on that. And then Mr. Duffy has been putting together some parameters for a request for proposal. And then with the board's approval, we could send that out for advertisement to see what we're hoping by this summer to start getting some feedback on uses for that property for there. So the treasure collector job has been posted. So that's been sent to all of the trade publications, and the consultants are doing outreach for that position. So I think the deadline is in 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah,
So,
May 15th.
yeah, I think 2 weeks will be the deadline. Not the deadline, it's the first review of the candidates. So that it'll be rolling, so that we'll keep accepting applications in the event that there wasn't enough candidates or a candidate that wasn't up to the qualifications. We then can keep considering other applicants. But after that deadline at the end of 2 weeks, that we'd like to at least start to have the consultants start going through them and giving us some feedback at that point. So those are just a few quick things. I think most of the time has been taken up with, budget, town meeting and things. So those are the few quick operational issues that we have. We are still doing a monthly project meeting on the technology. I mean, not monthly, weekly project meeting on the technology upgrades on Wednesdays. So they were here again this morning. And then the discovery departments are working with OpenGov to do discovery for the e-permitting to try to get that up and running as well too. So yep,
Awesome.
a lot happening, a lot going on.
Very exciting.
What's the ETA on the technology upgrade? What's the ETA on the technology? Is it kind of rolling or? when-
Yeah, they're
Just my- Come on.
yeah, I think it's in summer. They're July 1, they'll be taking over management of the network. So then once that happens, everything will start moving quickly. They're doing all their back office stuff now, but until they're managing the network, they don't want to implement to roll out anything until they're overseeing the whole thing. So definitely this summer, between the email, the phones, and hopefully all the computers, that'll be a bigger project. Hoping by the end of the summer, but email and phones will be early summer.
Great.
That'll be done. So
Excellent. Thank you for the updates.
thank you.
Under administrative business, we have a one-day wine and malt liquor license for the Cruisin' Clinton 2 on July 18th, 2024.
I'll move to approve the request for one-day wine malt liquor license for the Clinton Cruising event, July 18th.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none? All in favor?
Aye.
Permission to close Church Street, Walnut Street, and Union Streets for the Cruisin' Clinton 2 on July 18th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Any
This is the same as last year, right?
Same, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a bigger turnout than they were expecting last year, so they want to secure more street.
Just, yeah, as long as the police are informed and involved. It's fine.
Perfect. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Water sewer abatement request for 17 Clamshell Road. It's a pleasure.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the abatement for Stephen Grant, water sewer at 17 Clamshell Road.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Old and new business. Wait for Mr. Ward to come back for the treasurer collector retirement. The 12-month union meeting schedule, that was a request from Mr. Devault, so we can table that. The commercial space and inventory was also a request from Mr. Devault, so we can table that piece.
Should have told him that an hour
I
ago.
know. I know. Just
I thought you were just here taking it all in, seeing your government in action here. My fault. Phil, if it was me, I would have made a motion to work out of order so we can get you ahead of time, but
I didn't. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it. I would have, yep, it's on me, sorry.
yeah, I think, yeah, that's. Hey,
happy
it's been,
to talk about it. Okay.
all right. The electric vehicle, so let's go back to the treasurer collector retirement.
Oh, yes, just to officially, Mr. Kittredge has issued his letter. I know he's been giving us the signals and actually being upfront to say he's leaving, but he did give a formal letter that as of June 12th, that he'll be leaving the day-to-day operations, but he has agreed to stay on, through the summer as needed, how many times per week to do the bigger things to keep the office running, and he'll still have the authority as treasurer collector to sign off and do the banking and all that until somebody is appointed.
Very good. Excellent.
Yeah, and I think as Mr. Duffy, we just talked about, he's putting together the inventory, and then also while he's here, I know Phil has been working on the electric charging stations as well too. So if there was any question about those, that he's.
Yes, so, right now, they're free. So I'd like the board to, consider, implementing, a pay to charge program for these charging stations. And, either, I've done some research on them. I've spoke to the company, on different rates, but at least to kind of keep it simple, I would request that we kind of look at a rate per hourly charge until we can maybe come up with something a little more comprehensive on it. Because I don't think the taxpayer should be supplementing anybody's vehicle charging at this point. Were you able to find the kilowatt hour cost by any chance? Is it the same kilowatt hour cost for the entire town?
It is, yeah, but that we have the supplier charge, but then there's the distribution charge. So we'd have to put all that together and see. I know Angela had requested a copy of the Parks and Rec electric bill to see what they're paying at that building, so that we know what their rate is. It should be, the supplier rate should all be the same. I just don't know when the distribution charge, if there's different uses, that there might be different rates for that. But I think our supplier charge is 10 cents or I don't know if it's up to 11. I don't think it may have been 10.6 or something, but we're trying to track down that information for you.
So, and Mr. Farrager, he had reached back out. I had asked him, and he said over at the cemetery, it's about 11 cents per kilowatt hour is what he looked at the rate wise. And then,
but that's again the supplier side, so that wouldn't be the whole.
Correct.
I don't know if they would charge like a connection charge, and what that would be as well too. The actual electricity supply you use is under contract for that 11 cents. It might be 10.8 or 10.6 or whatever, something like that, just about 11 cents. So.
But there are other costs you may want to capture in those include subscription. Service does a connectivity fee, so they can connect to their space in it. There's also a maintenance fee, a maintenance contract. I've had a conversation with my counterpart in Millbury, where they've had EV stations for years, and about how they managed the monies that came in, how it worked for them. I mean, he said one thing that they didn't do was that they didn't have a maintenance contract when they needed maintenance. They were just lucky that ARPA was around. Otherwise, they would have been on the hook for like $25,000-$50,000. So we have been working with an energy consultant, same one that Russ worked with when these were installed, and they promised me a long time ago a spreadsheet on kind of a worksheet on what you should factor into your kilowatt charge. Haven't followed up because we're still waiting to hear from a SEC grant application we made for those charging stations. But I can follow up with that and see what that is. So we're sure that we're not looking necessarily, we can't lose money on these. I don't think we're necessarily looking to make money on them because quite frankly, I don't think there's that much demand for them. But we should make sure that we're accounting for all potential charges connected.
Yeah, I agree with you. I looked at Concord. Concord just implemented they were 60 cents per hour is what they had done. Millbury, I thought I think they were almost on $1 per hour. They seem to be a little bit higher.
So they do it by the hour rather than by the kilowatt.
Kilowatt hour,
Okay.
Yeah. But I think, I know we've been paying for it since they've been installed. But I think either if we could do a temporary, whether, it's 60 cents per hour until we can look further into it, because otherwise I would make the recommendation that we turn them off until we figure it out, because like I said, those things are being used constantly, which is great, but I just don't think that the taxpayer should be supplementing it.
If it's free,
at this time. Otherwise, I'm going to ask that we leave the town barn gate open and we can just go fill our own cars up at the time, but just.
Well, I think this would primarily be the responsibility of the facilities director. I believe these arrived in town as a result of a Green Communities grant, and Brian's predecessor had handled identified the location and handled the install. But I'd be happy to communicate with him what I've learned in doing the research and preparing the applications for the charging stations in the Church and Walnut Street lots. So to just give him what I know and let him take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, would it be prudent to maybe implement some sort of fee in the short term? Like, I don't care if it's 50 cents or whatever it needs. It should be greater than free though, right?
Yeah, I think it should be, it should have something. And I think, Mr. W, you said you went down and looked to see that there is the ability to.
Yeah, it does. It appears that the machines are set, because sometimes these machines are not set up with a module where they can, attach the card swipe apparatus. This one appears to be set up for that. I think the first thing that has to be discovered is what's our status or relationship, if any, with ChargePoint. ChargePoint is basically they're like a vendor. They're like a credit card company for these.
Yeah, I had reached out to ChargePoint a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
They gave Mr. Farragher all the information. He got set up as the network administrator or system administrator. So now it's just the next step now of he has full capability to put in any charges or any fees or set up other users. So we're there. It's just through the app. I think theirs is all app based.
Yeah, because we'd have to see like where that money would go, if it gets, how often it gets turned over, if it's a direct turnover, if it's an automatic turnover, do they send a check, so yeah, I think we'd have to talk with the accountant and the treasurer on the mechanism of capturing that money.
Yeah, they said you'd have to provide an account information and then it's just automatically spills into that. So I didn't know if there's a possibility even on that side where can you set up an account specifically for the charging stations where then just kind of, any funding that goes into it stays there. So then to your point, if there's any maintenance or anything that they kind of, fund themselves a little bit.
Yeah, I think a discussion needs to be had with the treasurer and the accountant and council, because I don't know if this is a stabilization fund. I don't know if it's a revolving fund, what it is, but for the money to come in and go out, it shouldn't be going in and out of the general fund. It should be going out of a dedicated account, my opinion.
Yeah. And for them to identify when it comes in, that they know what it's for as well, because if they just get a wire or a check, it's got to have some code to know where to direct it once it gets to where.
Yeah. My understanding is that ChargePoint reimburses quarterly. So quarterly they send out a check.
And I think at the rec center, their electric bill is for the whole building.
It's not separately
I
metered.
don't know how you'd single out paying for the charger electricity. If the money's going to a separate account, so we'd have to look at
Well, they must have a meter on they must have a meter.
the meter. I think they only get one bill.
Yeah, they must have a meter attached to the charging station itself. So it knows how much juice is going through the nozzle, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think if we're not ready to implement at least a temporary fee, then I would suggest that we turn the charging station off until we do. I don't know if I'm not looking to put anybody on the spot there, but
I mean, yeah, it was kind of jarring, the electric bill jump.
Was it?
And it seems like it's all kind of deriving back to the charging stations, from what I understand.
Oh. Well, that makes sense. I understand, like if you're on the app, it'll tell you where EV charging stations are and you can look up how much they're charging. And
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm living 2 towns over and I see it's free, it's kind of like how people jump for that
cheap, yeah.
9/10 of a cent at the gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah,
people go miles. for
they have when I had spoke to the vendor, municipalities have it set up, or even commercial use, where after your vehicle is done charging, then it begins to charge you anywhere from $5 to $10 per hour for taking up that spot. So to your point, if someone's coming from out of town charging their vehicle, there's really no penalty for them to grab it in the morning,
Yeah.
because, there's no fee attached, but
Quite frankly, it's not an ideal location for charging station either, parallel to the curb, no dedicated parking.
we are the one that's down behind the Clinton Elementary School next to the dumpster and recycling bins.
Oh, there's one back there too?
Yeah, yeah.
Are we
I
charging?
shouldn't have said that because.
Are we charging? Are we charging for that one? Probably. not.
No, they're both, I checked them both out. They're both free.
Okay.
Free as can be.
How many are there total?
Two.
But I think they're great. I think we should have them.
Yeah.
As many places as we can. I think it's great. I think that's, to your point, the location is questionable, but they're there.
Okay, well, I'll follow up with Brian. I mean, ideally, I don't know, see if we can have something to recommend to you by the next meeting.
Sure.
It's a question of just making phone calls and understanding what kind of relationship we have to have with ChargePoint. We at least probably set a fee as to where that money goes when it comes in. I think that has to be followed up with the financials.
Do we get issues and see what they
That's
have.
what I was wondering.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we shut down the electric vehicle charging stations until a fee structure can be, and financial mechanics be established.
I'll second that.
Any questions? There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, authority to establish departmental hours of operation. We can table this. It's unless you're prepared. Sure, go for it.
And we, that's a brief conversation, but the board of selectmen want to issue a policy about hours. It could certainly do that. But, as far as like the Board of Health, library trustees, Parks and Recreation commissioners, they have their own statutory authority. And I think that based upon, and that statutory authority for those three organizations or departments, it's pretty broad. They manage their own departments. They can set, under that statute, they could set their own hours. I mean, doesn't specifically say that, but they have the management of their government. I forget the exact language of each of the statutes. They wouldn't have to abide by it. Certainly they could volunteer. You could have a policy where the Board of Selectmen want, departments to keep set hours, but those departments under their statutory scheme, you would have to file special legislation to get that change and say, notwithstanding what the statute says for the Board of Health, the Board of Selectmen can set their hours. You know what I mean? So Council on Aging, there's a statute on that, but that statute there is very limited. They don't appear to have, and they're appointed by the Board of Selectmen anyway. But that statute, they don't appear to have the authority that these other three departments would have. They're all elected. So I'd say, again, Board of Health, library trustees, and the Parks and Rec, those statutes give them the authority to manage their department. So they could voluntarily agree to do it, but if they didn't, I don't think the Board of Selectmen could force them to do it.
So let me ask you a question on say a policy where an employee cannot schedule themselves to work on a day that the department is not open. Okay. Can the personnel board or is there a policy that could be created that would prevent someone from, hypothetically speaking, if Mr. Ward said he's not working on Fridays, he's gonna work on Saturdays when the building's closed down, right? What would prevent that? Or what would that enable it? Like, would these boards be able to enable that?
I think under the broad statute, they could, just like this board could allow Mr. Ward to do that.
True, okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
So I think those elected officials under their
Understood.
statutory scheme, if they saw fit, that was the best way for them to run their department, I think under those three statutes, they could. Again, that's just
Understood.
So, that's, the statutes are broad in terms of what those departments have for powers. And again, if you want to change that, I think you'd have to file special legislation.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Is there any other old and new business? All right, and then community announcements. On to that.
Just,
Oh,
Mr. Chairman.
sure.
I guess I know time of day is getting late, but, I guess, again, under committee reports, I would just, make a plea out there again to see if there's anybody that's interested in continuing Old Home Day. I have heard numerous comments about people about the fact that they're, really disappointed that there won't be an Old Home Day this year after all these years. So if there's anybody out there that's interested,
Are
So
those people
we had
want to
just,
volunteer?
so we actually had talked about it the other day, so, there's, not that I don't have enough to do already, but I have, I'm willingly gonna step forward to, try to put a group together to make it happen this year, so. We'll meet and talk a little more about that and then, go from there. Any other committee
Good luck.
reports? Oh, absolutely. That's why they have that, glass, right? That's break for emergency, you know?
That's you.
That's, we're almost there. Almost there. But, all right, community announcements. News from Bigelow Library. The Bigelow Public Library will be hosting a library building grant question and answer forum on May 9th at 6:30 PM at the Clinton Town Hall Chamber Room. Come learn about Clinton's library construction project grant application. Tours of the library will be offered following the forum. For more information, email info@bigelowlibrary.org. Wachusett Dam Day, DCR Division of Water Supply Protection will open the top of the Wachusett Dam for the public to access, walk across, and enjoy from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, May 11th. Due to increased security, backpacks, briefcases, large bags, and dogs will not be allowed. You can visit www.mass.gov/locations/Wachusett-reservoir. We had there was another one, tributes and Saturday. The tribute is May 4th, this Saturday.
If you can still register.
Scroll.
I'm not giving out anything people would be in this year, but I think it starts at 9 o'clock. Early registration is 8:15. Some great honorees, and I think the weather's going to hold out, so it goes to a great cause. Walkers are available too. Sorry, I didn't have talking points on this one.
No problem.
They are on Facebook, or you can just search for Clinton Tribute Roadways.
Very good. The Clinton Historical Society will hold an anniversary reception and open house on Wednesday, June 5th at the Holder Memorial. The ceremony honoring the 120th anniversary of the laying of the cornerstone of the building will take place at 6:30 p.m. The open house featuring new exhibits will be from 7 to 9 p.m. with refreshments and an anniversary cake. The public is cordially invited to attend. We will be exiting open session and entering into executive session for fire union negotiations and public safety dispatcher union negotiations. We will not be returning to public session. Our next meeting is Wednesday, May 15th. I will accept roll call to exit public session to enter executive session.
Sean Kerrigan, aye.
Julie Bruce, aye.
Mary Dick, aye.
Kovas, aye. Thank you very much.